All right, let's jump into another deep dive. Looks like we're going for a pretty well-rounded approach today, huh?
Oh, yeah.
You've handed us a whole stack of news straight from India. We've got politics, finance, a bit about the Olympics even.
Wow, sounds like a full plate.
Yep, so we'll be pulling out the need-to-know stuff from each story, plus those little details that really help it stick.
Love it. Ready when you are.
Okay, first up, the Delhi elections. Things are getting heated, and we've got two headlines here painting a kind of contrasting picture, don't we?
How so?
Well, one headline's got Kejriwal straight up issuing a warning about the BJP,
Hmm.
and the other's all about the BJP's confidence in winning the whole thing.
Ah, classic pre-election vibes. It's like two totally different realities. But to understand why each side feels this way, we got to look at how they're playing the game.
Yeah, okay.
This article on Kejriwal, he's really leaning on what they call the freebie card,
Hmm.
basically reminding voters about all the free services his party's been providing.
Makes you think, right? Like, is it truly about those services helping people, or is it just a way to, appeal to voters' wallets?
It's a clever tactic, no doubt. But then we've got Anurag Thakur from the BJP, and he's taking a totally different route.
Oh, yeah? How's he approaching it?
Instead of focusing on those tangible benefits, Thakur's trying to swing public opinion by basically saying the AAP is anti-woman, bringing up some recent controversies to paint a negative image, which can be pretty powerful, especially with how sensitive those accusations are.
Wow, so it's one side appealing to practical needs, and the other, it's more like moral judgments. Makes you wonder what the real issues are in this election, huh? Okay, let's switch gears from politics to a different kind of boom, the Indian stock market. One headline shouting about the NSE crossing a huge G milestone, over 110 million investors.
Whoa, that's not just a number. That's a massive change in the Indian financial landscape. It shows that regular, everyday Indians are getting into the stock market, which is huge GE.
Over 110 million? It's kind of hard to grasp the energy around that. And it's not just the numbers, right? The Sensex and Nifty are surging too, with, get this, IT stocks leading the charge.
Makes sense. We're talking Wipro, Infosys, TCS. These aren't just Indian companies anymore. They're global giants. This surge, especially in IT, shows just how connected the Indian economy is to global tech trends, especially what's coming out of Silicon Valley.
You're right. India's tech sector is riding that wave of global innovation. All right, ready to jump into a world where India truly dominates? Let's talk cricket. We've got an amazing victory against England in the first T20 International.
Fantastic start to the series, can't deny that. And we got to mention Abhishek Sharma, 79, runs off just 34 balls. What a performance. That kind of innings electrifies the crowd, sets the tone for the whole match.
Oh, for sure. Definitely shifted things in India's favor. And it's even bigger, considering England's no pushover. They're a tough opponent. This is going to be one captivating series. But beyond these high-stakes international games, we've also got stories of pure dedication, like Mohammad Siraj.
Ah, yes. Siraj is grinding his way back into the national team through the Ranji Trophy. Really shows his commitment, and the level of competition for those spots on the national team is fierce.
It shows you that dedication, that relentless pursuit of excellence that's all over Indian cricket. All right, get ready for this one. We're about to dive into a sport you might not be familiar with. Kho Kho.
Kho Kho. Okay, now I'm intrigued.
It's a traditional Indian game, kind of like tag, but with this unique blend of strategy, speed, and agility. And get this, India just dominated the first ever Kho Kho World Cup.
No way, seriously.
Yep, double victory. Both the men's and women's teams took home the gold. Maybe this points to a bigger trend, traditional sports getting that global spotlight.
It's a fascinating thought, like a cultural shift happening. We see it with food, music.
Yeah.
Why not sports too?
Exactly. Okay, let's talk about the future for a bit. We've got two headlines that give us a peek into what's coming. The Union Budget 2025 and hold on to your hats. The possibility of cricket in the Olympics.
Whoa, cricket at the Olympics. Okay, I'm all ears.
So for the budget, the buzz is all about increased spending, but with a big emphasis on keeping things fiscally disciplined and working on reducing that debt to GDP ratio.
Classic balancing act, right?
Right.
India wants growth, but also stability. The budget's key to making that happen.
For sure. Now, picture this. Cricket at the LA 2028 games. It could be a total game changer, literally, bringing the sport to a whole new audience.
Okay, I gotta admit, that'd be something else. Imagine the crowds, the global stage.
Right. It would be wild.
It's kind of crazy how this whole surge in retail investors we talked about ties back to the budget.
Oh, totally.
Like if more and more people are getting into the stock market, They'll be paying extra attention to what the budget says about the whole financial sector, right?
Exactly. Think about it. Things like tax breaks, investment incentives, those little things could have a huge impact on their portfolios. Suddenly the budget isn't just this abstract thing, it's directly affecting their lives.
Exactly. And it brings up another interesting thing from those articles. The government's push to lower that debt to GDP ratio. While that shows, fiscal responsibility, it often comes with some tough choices.
Yeah, you're right. It's a balancing act for sure. Like maybe cutting back on some programs or finding ways to boost revenue from other places.
Yeah.
Trying to boost growth while ensuring things are stable long term. It's tricky stuff.
It really is. And that's where public perception comes in. If people feel like the government's making good financial decisions, they're more likely to invest, participate in the economy. Being transparent and communicating clearly is key.
Okay, enough about budgets and numbers for now. Let's get back to the exciting stuff like Indian sports, specifically that whole idea of cricket in the Olympics. Wild, right?
I'm still wrapping my head around the logistics of it all.
Yeah.
Cricket needs a specific kind of field, right? And the matches, especially those test matches, they go on for way longer than a lot of Olympic sports. How would they even fit that into the schedule?
It's a good question. Maybe they could adapt existing baseball or soccer stadiums, or dedicate longer time slots for cricket matches. It takes some serious out-of-the-box thinking, that's for sure.
And then there's that whole debate. Which format would they even use?
Oh, right, yeah.
T20 is fast-paced, exciting, grabs your attention, right? But those cricket purists? They'd probably push for those traditional 5-day test matches.
5-day test match at the Olympics, can you imagine? It'd be an epic display of skill, strategy, endurance, both for the players and the viewers.
It'd be a sight to see for sure. But realistically, a shorter format like T20 might be better suited. It's dynamic, action-packed, and let's be honest, people's attention spans these days.
Yeah, true, true. But hey, maybe they could create a hybrid format just for the Olympics, something that combines the best of both worlds.
Now that's interesting. It's exciting to think about all the possibilities. One thing's for sure, cricket at the Olympics would have a global event unlike anything we've seen before.
Oh, absolutely. And think about the impact on countries where cricket isn't really a big thing yet. You might see places like the US, China, even Brazil picking up the bat and ball, adding their own twist to the game.
It could be huge. We could see cricket truly become a global sport, inspiring a whole new generation of players from every corner of the world.
It's amazing to picture the kind of cultural exchange that could happen. People from all different backgrounds brought together by their love for this sport that's, deeply rooted in Indian tradition.
It'd be a beautiful example of how sports can bring people together, breaking down cultural barriers, fostering a sense of global community. It's a heartwarming thought.
Okay, we've talked about all the exciting stuff, the challenges, the potential impact. But realistically, do you actually see cricket making it to the 2028 games?
Tough to say for sure. That ICC meeting with the IOC, it's definitely a step in the right direction. It shows they're serious, both sides.
Yeah.
But, like we discussed, there are still hurdles to overcome.
Like scheduling, revenue sharing. What else do you see as a potential roadblock?
Well, there's also the fact that there are tons of other sports out there fighting for a spot in the Olympics, right? The games are always evolving, new sports get added, others get left behind. Cricket's got to make a strong case, show why it deserves to be there, what it brings to the table.
High bar for sure, but not impossible. The fact that these discussions are even happening is a good sign, right? Shows that cricket's Olympic dream is alive and kicking.
Definitely. It's proof that the sport's becoming more and more popular around the world and has got the potential to capture audiences everywhere.
Let's circle back to those Delhi elections for a sec. We talked about all those contrasting headlines, the different strategies the AAP and BJP are using. But what really stands out to you about this election? What feels most important?
What strikes me is that this one feels less about big ideologies and more about the day-to-day stuff that affects the people of Delhi. It's about those tangible issues: clean water, reliable electricity, good schools and hospitals, safe and efficient transportation.
You're right. It's about those everyday essentials, the stuff that makes a city livable. And of course, you can't forget about the pollution problem. That's huge in Delhi and needs some serious attention.
Absolutely. And then you've got jobs, economic opportunities. People want to live in a city that gives them a shot at a better future for themselves, their families, a city where they can grow and thrive.
So it's a mix of those basic needs and those bigger aspirations. This election is about choosing the path Delhi's going to take, which party's best equipped to handle those challenges.
Exactly. Ultimately, It's up to the people of Delhi to decide. They hold the power to shape the future of their city.
It's interesting how these local issues tie into those bigger national trends. We were talking about the union budget earlier. How do you think the results of the Delhi elections might affect the national economic agenda?
Now, that's a good question. Delhi elections are always seen as a kind of, temperature check on what people are thinking. The results could definitely influence the national conversation, especially when it comes to the economy. Like, if voters are really focused on things like creating jobs and boosting growth, the government might feel pressure to make those areas a priority in the budget and in their policies.
Makes sense. Even these local elections can have ripple effects on a national scale.
And speaking of connecting the dots, let's go back to that Kho Kho World Cup win. Pretty amazing, huh? You mentioned that it maybe shows a growing interest in traditional Indian sports. Why do you think these sports are getting more global attention now?
I think it's a combination of things. One is that people are becoming more aware of and more interested in different cultures.
Hmm.
Thanks in part to globalization, the world being more connected, people are curious to explore traditions and practices from outside their own little bubble.
So it's like a hunger for authenticity, a desire for something different from the usual stuff. Exactly. And these traditional sports, like Kho Kho, offer this unique mix of, well, athleticism, strategy, and cultural heritage. They're visually interesting, require real skill, and they have a story behind them that speaks to people across borders.
They also kind of tap into this sense of nostalgia, don't they? A reminder of simpler times, community-based activities, especially in today's world that's so digital and fast-paced.
Definitely. These games have a certain charm that goes beyond cultural differences. They remind us that we all share this love for play, competition, and celebrating together.
It's a beautiful thought that a simple game can break down those cultural barriers and bring people together.
It really is. Who knows, maybe one day we'll see Kho Kho right alongside cricket in the Olympics, showing the world the incredible diversity of Indian sports. It's a dream worth chasing, right?
Imagine that. The energy, the excitement, the global spotlight shining on these fantastic Indian sports. Now, before we move on, let's go back to something you brought up earlier, the government's focus on reducing that debt to GDP ratio. Can you break that down for those of us who aren't, economics experts?
Sure. Basically, the debt to GDP ratio compares a country's debt to how much its economy is producing. A high ratio means the country has a ton of debt compared to its income, and that can be risky. It can lead to bigger interest payments and potentially limit what the government can spend on important things, like infrastructure or social programs.
So trying to lower that ratio is generally a good thing.
Yeah, it's usually seen as a sign that the government's being careful with money, making sure the country's finances are sustainable. But it's important to remember, it's just one part of a much bigger economic picture.
Right. And it's all about finding that sweet spot, isn't it? Bringing down debt while still investing in growth and development.
Exactly. It's a delicate balancing act, one that needs a lot of planning and smart decision-making.
Now, before we jump to the last part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with something to think about. We've talked about how the government wants to reduce that debt ratio, but they also plan to increase spending. How do you think they can manage both of those things at the same time?
That's the big question, isn't it? And it's something they'll have to figure out carefully in this upcoming budget. They'll need to prioritize, make sure they're spending on things that will give them the biggest bang for their buck in terms of both economic growth and social progress.
It's all about being strategic, making every rupee count.
Exactly. It's a tough challenge, but it's going to shape India's economic future in the years to come.
All right, welcome back to the final stretch of our deep dive into India. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the intense Delhi elections and that booming stock market, to cricket, and even the potential rise of, what was it, Kho Kho?
It's been quite the journey. India's got a lot going on, that's for sure.
Absolutely. So in this last part, let's dig a little deeper into some of the stuff we've touched on. Remember those budget expectations, all that talk about increased spending, but also keeping things fiscally disciplined.
Yeah, the balancing act.
Right, exactly. Well, let's see if we can figure out which sectors might be getting the most attention.
My money's on infrastructure. India's developing so fast, they need those investments in roads, railways, airports. It's like building the foundation for everything else.
It's like setting the stage for India to become a major player on the global economic scene, right? Especially with their goal of being a manufacturing powerhouse. Good infrastructure is a must-have.
Exactly. And don't forget about the whole renewable energy push.
Yeah.
India is serious about reducing their carbon footprint, so I think we'll see a lot of investment in things like solar, wind power, all those clean energy sources.
Yeah, that makes sense. It fits with the whole global trend of going green. And it's not just about the environment either. It's about creating new jobs in a whole new sector, boosting the economy in a sustainable way.
Win-win, right? Okay, let's switch gears again for a sec. Remember those IT stocks that are just skyrocketing?
Oh, yeah. What's driving that crazy growth, I wonder?
It's got to be a few things working together. You've got global companies increasingly looking to India for software development, outsourcing, all that digital stuff. India's become kind of like the world's back office, but in a good way, you know?
It shows you how much expertise and competitive edge Indian tech companies have built up. And with all these advancements in AI, cloud computing, the demand for their skills is only going to go up.
No doubt. And that's where those big names come in. Wipro, Infosys, TCS. They've gone from being local players to global giants, right up there with the best.
It's an amazing story, really. From call centers to cutting-edge innovation, India's tech scene has come a long way.
It really speaks to their ingenuity, that entrepreneurial spirit they've got.
All right, let's bring it back to those Delhi elections for a minute. We talked about all the headlines, the strategies, but what about the people at the heart of it all? What are the issues that really hit home for them?
I think it boils down to quality of life, those basic things. Having clean water, reliable electricity, health care they can afford, a transportation system that's safe and efficient. These are the things that affect their everyday lives.
It's about making a city livable, right?
Right.
And you can't forget about the pollution. That's a huge problem in Delhi, something they really need to get a handle on.
Absolutely. And then there's the whole question of jobs, economic opportunities. People want to live in a city that gives them a chance to build a good life for themselves and their families.
So it's a mix of those essential needs and those hopes for a better future. This election is about making a choice, deciding which vision for Delhi is the right one.
Exactly. And it's the voters who get to make that choice. They're the ones who shape the future of their city.
And that brings us back to what's really fascinating about all of this, how all these seemingly separate stories connect, politics, finance, sports, culture. They're all intertwined. They make up the fabric of what India is today.
You're right, it all ties together. The stock market boom reflects those economic aspirations, which link directly to the government's priorities and the budget. That passion for cricket, it mirrors the whole national spirit. And those traditional sports like Kho Kho becoming more popular, that shows a resurgence of cultural pride.
It's amazing how it all fits together. It's like this snapshot of a nation that's moving forward, full of potential.
And it reminds us that even with all those global trends and economic numbers, it's the people, their stories, their hopes that really drive a nation forward. That collective spirit, that's what defines India.
That's a great way to put it. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one last thought. We've looked at all the headlines, explored the trends, but the real story of India is playing out in the lives of its people. It's a story of resilience, ambition, and a nation that's charting its own course in a world that's constantly changing.
It's a story that's still being written, full of challenges and opportunities. It's a story that invites all of us to learn more, understand more, and appreciate the beauty and complexity of this incredible nation.
And with that, we encourage you to keep exploring, stay curious, and keep discovering all that India has to offer. That's all from us for today. Thanks for joining us.